Hey, so we have a quiz on Friday, Sam?
Yes.
Okay. You know what? You know why I'm calling it a quiz?
Why?
You don't know?
No.
Because that sounds less stressful than an exam.
Yes, it does.
Okay. So it's just a quiz. No worries. And there will be test corrections. So not that you will need them. I have every confidence in you.
Thank you.
Don't you hate it, Andrew, when the livestock get in the way?
Yeah, I can't even, yeah.
I feel the same way with my kids. All right, so same format as the first exam, 30 multiple choice questions. The exam will cover everything since the last exam, so that it includes topics 5 and 6 on the course outline. So that's the introduction to business, production and costs, and the different market structures, perfect competition, monopoly, oligopoly, and monopolistic competition. So there's a whole lot of material there, and a lot of it is fairly technical. So I encourage you to use my lecture notes as sort of an outline of what I think is important. My lecture notes are available on the course outline. I will show you in a minute if I can find it. Let's see, here's the course outline. Not that you haven't seen this before. Let's see, invite, no chat, no breakout rooms. Where is, let's see, no, that's not it. I am losing it here. How do I share my screen? There we go, that's how. All right, so hopefully you can see the course outline. So it's this stuff and this stuff. A lot of content in there. There are a couple of outside readings, but they're short. Here are my lecture notes. You kind of hover over them and then you go up and you click on the link. So it's easy to get to. All right, any questions about that? Good, then I will go back to my notes. Open that up. Screen management is a skill. Okay, what I thought we would do is go over some of the questions that you guys have raised in your module analyses. Going back to the previous module, you need to know all the cost relationships. You need to know things like average total cost is total cost divided by quantity. Average anything is total anything divided by quantity. Marginal cost is the change in total cost divided by the change in quantity. The same relationships hold for the product curves. So there's average product and marginal product and total product. And we know that the cost curves are inversely related to the product curves. If you draw them one over the other, you'll see that they're opposites, basically, mirror images. Okay. Somebody asked about the short run versus the long run. The difference is that in the short run, there's at least one fixed factor of production. Usually it's some form of capital. In the long run, all factors are variable. If you see a total cost curve and it starts at the origin, is that a long run or a short run total cost curve?
Long run.
How do you know?
There's no fixed cost.
Exactly. Because there are no fixed factors, there are no fixed costs, which means it has to start at 0. Good job, Kevin. All right. The way I really think about the difference between the short run and the long run is that firms plan for the long run, but they operate in the short run. So firms are always in some short run. Okay. I usually think of that as as the lease on their factory or their office building or whatever. When the lease runs out, they can move to a new location if they want, but they're stuck in the short term until for the duration of the lease. All right, another question. Somebody said, I do not fully understand. I like the fully part. There's a lot I don't fully understand. I do not fully understand the difference between legal and natural monopoly. It's really a simple difference. A legal monopoly is only a monopoly because it's against the law for other firms to try to compete with it. In other words, if there were no legal protection, other firms would get into the industry. True story. Some years ago, there was a company in the Denver area that offered to mail your utility bills to your utilities at less than the price that it would cost you to get the postage. And the way they did that, it was actually a very smart operation. They used bulk rate postage so that what the Postal Service charged them was less than what the Postal Service charged us. You know, so basically the difference between retail and wholesale. And they were so successful that the Postal Service got mad and they went to the legal authorities and they filed suit against the company, and the company was found to be violating their protection and they had to go out of business. Okay, so first class mail is an example of a legal monopoly. Would it be possible in this day and age for a company to deliver your mail across the country within 3 days and get it there at least as effectively as the Postal Service does? Is that even possible?
Amazon.
Right? FedEx. Okay. So how do the package deliverers get away with being at least as effective as the Postal Service and not getting into trouble about it? The answer is they charge more. They charge more than the Postal Service. And because they're charging more than the Postal Service, they have been judged to not be violating the protection of the Postal Service, right? So if you send an overnight mail by FedEx, it costs more than an overnight mail by express mail, even though it's ostensibly the same service, right? Why doesn't everyone use the Postal Service then? Why does anybody send mail with FedEx if it costs more?
Terrible.
What's that?
Because the post office is terrible.
Yes, exactly. You know, if it has to get there, you know, you don't want to necessarily use the Postal Service. Okay. So then a natural monopoly is a firm that even without legal protection would be able to keep out the competition. Okay. This occurs for one of two main reasons. One is if you are the sole owner of the item, okay, like OPEC and oil has this sort of natural monopoly power, then no one can compete with you anyway because no one has access to the product but you. You don't need the law to keep out the competition. Much more likely example is economies of scale. Okay, economies of scale means the more you produce, the lower your average cost. And so if you imagine an industry where the demand is only large enough for one firm to get to the bottom of the long run average cost curve, then basically there's a race on, and the first firm to get there will be able to undercut the price of every other competitor. And at that point, they win. Okay, so that's a natural monopoly also. Okay, any questions? All right, somebody else wrote, I do not understand entry and exit. Okay, this is pretty easy actually. There is no entry or exit in the short run. It's just not allowed. And what that means is new firms can't come into the industry and existing firms can't leave until you reach the long run. Okay. In the long run, because everything is variable and firms can, you know, they can increase their capital stock, they can decrease their capital stock, they can enter a new industry, they can leave the industry that they're in. Basically, it's how profitable is the industry. If firms in an industry are earning positive economic profits in the long run, that means other firms are going to find that industry attractive, okay? And so they're going to tend to want to come in. If in the long run, though, firms are earning economic losses, they're going to want to leave and go somewhere where they can at least earn zero economic profits, which is a normal accounting profit. Okay, so it all comes down to economic profit in the long run. All right. Several people said they had trouble using the graphs to figure out profit, to figure out quantity and price. So I thought we would go over that a little bit. That's not difficult to do. Let me see if I can share my screen again. All right, that will work. No, not that one. We want, where did that go? Let's try another time. Here we go. Okay, so here we have, this is actually from the module on monopolistic competition. The thing to understand is that if you're not a perfectly competitive firm, which means most firms in most industries, you have a downward sloping demand curve. You have a downward sloping marginal revenue curve, and you have an upward sloping marginal cost curve. So whether you're an oligopoly or a monopolistic competitor or monopoly, your graph is going to look something like this. Okay, so so the first step is you find the quantity, you find a point where marginal revenue equals marginal cost. You go down to the x-axis and you read what the quantity is. So in this graph, the quantity is 40 units of output. Then you use the demand curve to ask the question, if I want to sell 40 units of output, what's the highest price I can get away charging? So you go up to the demand curve and then you read to the left, and you'll see that it looks like about $16 or $17, $16, I guess, according to the graph there, right? So first you find MR equals MC, then you find the quantity and the price. Okay, so what we know is if the firm charges $16 and sells 40 units of output, they will be maximizing their profits. And that's good. That's great news. What we don't know is we don't know how large or small that profit is going to be. In order to figure that out, what additional information do we need?
Total cost curve.
Well, we need the average cost curve. If we have the total cost curve, we can figure out the average cost curve. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to scroll down. Actually, I think I'm going to more than scroll down. I think it's in another module here. Nope, there it is. Okay, so we have a demand curve. We have a marginal revenue curve. We have a marginal cost curve. So we do exactly what we did. We find where MR equals MC, go down to the quantity, that's 40. Go up to the demand curve. Demand is at $16. Okay, but now additionally, we have information about the average cost. Okay, and what you can see here is that a quantity of 40, the average cost curve is below the demand curve. That's really important because that means that the price is greater than the average cost. Or to put it differently, that means that the firm has a positive profit margin. It's making positive economic profits. Okay, I'm going to guess and say it looks like the average cost there is about 14. So the difference between a $16 price and a $14 average cost is a $2 profit margin. Doesn't sound like much, but then when you multiply it by the 40 units of output, you get the dark blue area, okay, which is 2 times 40 is $80. Okay, another way to think about this is we know that profit is total revenue minus total cost. Total revenue is price times quantity. The price is 16. We got that off the demand curve. The quantity is 40. We got that from where MR equals MC. So the area of this rectangle, the larger rectangle, is the total revenue. The total cost is going to be average cost, which is 14, times the quantity, which is 40. So that's that kind of purple area across the bottom. The difference between total revenue, the big rectangle, and total cost, the lower rectangle, is the little sliver across the top. That's profit. So this firm is looking pretty good because they're making a positive economic profit.
Why did the marginal cost, the marginal revenue, why do those curves start at like x equals 20 as opposed to going all the way to
no reason?
Okay.
Yeah, we know that actually a marginal cost curve looks kind of like a Nike sign, so it probably starts over here, dips down, and then heads up. But in this particular scenario, we're not going to be there. So sure, the demand curve should go all the way over to here, and the marginal revenue curve should intersect at exactly the same point. Yes.
Because if it went the whole way, could you somehow use the marginal cost curve to figure out the average?
Yeah, you
cost
could
curve?
if you integrated the area under the marginal cost curve is going to be total cost.
Okay.
Okay. Notice I skipped right past the nasty C word. Sam, did you catch that? Or
Did.
okay. So we're not going to talk about that. Very practical in real life, but don't want to scare people. Now, I'm sure none of you are scared, but it's those other people that didn't show up here.
What was the C word?
Calculus.
Oh.
Math.
Well, you said integrates. That's already calculus.
Well, yes, it is. It is. But see, if you don't know calculus, you'll just go, "Oh, I don't understand what he said." But at least he didn't use the C word or the M word. The M word is almost as bad.
It's my favorite word.
Ugh.
I know.
I got
Sam,
my
what are you
little
studying
sign
here?
right here. See?
Sam, what are you studying?
Not math.
Oh.
MBA, luckily.
Well, I believe there's
Yeah.
at least a little bit of math in that.
Yeah.
Okay. So, all right. Now, where were we? Yes, one more thing. Okay, so the entry-exit question, we can look at that in terms of the graphs again. I think it's on a different graph. Let's jump back to the study plan here. And exit and entry. Well, that was interesting. I didn't click on that. It just did it. All right. All right, here we go. So this is entry, exit, and profits in the long run. It's further down. Okay. So this is a more complicated set of graphs, but it's not really that difficult. Let's focus on the left-hand side. What this really shows is two sets of demand and marginal revenue curves. Okay, and Andrew should be happy because they go all the way back over to the origin. Okay, so we have D0. That's interesting. Okay, so at D0, the first step again is to figure out what quantity of output should we produce. So you find the marginal revenue curve and where it intersects the marginal cost curve, and that's at that point S right there. The quantity is Q0, you go up to the demand curve, you read the price P0 off of there. Now the question is this firm making money or losing money? Well,
It's making money.
here's the price at this quantity. Here's the average cost. The average cost is way below the price. So the profit margin is from here to here, which means that graphically, this area from where the AC curve intersects Q0 all the way back here and up, that's profit. So this firm is making significant positive economic profits, all right? And what that's going to do is that's going to make their industry attractive to outsiders, and that's going to make firms want to come into the industry, all right? Now, when they do that, what happens to this firm's demand?
Just to the left.
It's going to shrink, right? If there are new competitors, they're going to take away, or they're going to attempt to take away your business, right? So with the new demand curve, what you'll notice is it's drawn in the new long-run equilibrium at point Y. Okay, once again, MC and MR intersect at this quantity, which is now Q1. You go up to the demand curve at point Y, you read the price. Notice also that average cost is also at point Y. So price equals average cost. The profit margin is 0. The firm is earning 0 economic profits. Okay, once firms in this industry are earning 0 economic profits, new firms no longer find this an attractive industry to move into. Okay, so that's T is a short run point, Y is a long run point. Okay, now the same story, but in reverse, happens over here. Okay, where we start is D0, MR0, and the marginal cost curve, right? So where marginal cost intersects MR0, yeah, I'm a little bit confused here. Where MR0 intersects the marginal cost curve at point W, that's our profit maximizing level of output, Q0. Then you go up Q0 until you hit the demand curve, D0, and you read the price. So the good news is the firm is now maximizing its profits. The bad news is its price is way below average cost. Average cost is going to be up here somewhere. So they're losing a pile of money. Okay, reminds me of in 8th grade when I earned an F+ on an exam. And I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. I was really kind of taken aback. So I asked the teacher, she was a nice little old lady. I said, you know, what is an F+? And she said, well, of all the students who failed, you did the best. So I guess that's kind of this situation. You're maximizing profits. You're doing the best you can, but you're not doing enough to make a profit, an actual profit here. Okay, so in the short run, this firm is stuck in the industry because they can't leave, right? And assuming that they're operating above their shutdown point, they're still better off staying in business and losing money than they would be to shut down. Okay, because they'll end up owing less money by staying in business. In the long run, when firms have the opportunity to leave, some firms in the industry are going to exit. And when they do, the demand for this this one firm is going to increase out in the direction of point Z. Notice at point Z, with an increase in demand for their product, they're going to increase supply to Q1, again, because Q1 is the level of output where marginal cost equals the new marginal revenue curve. Then you go up to the demand curve and you read the price P1 off there. Notice also that Z is where the average cost curve intersects that Q1. And so the profit margin is 0. At least they're not losing money. They're making 0 economic profit. And at that point, firms stop exiting because they're doing as well in this industry as they can do anywhere else. Okay, so again, it's about understanding how to use the graphs to analyze the situation. Questions? All right. Now let's go back to my notes and see what other questions people had. There are 2 things that won't be on the exam, so you don't need to worry about them. One is antitrust stuff. Okay, so a short synopsis here. Being a monopoly in the US is illegal. It's against various antitrust statutes. So the only monopolies that exist in the US legally are regulated monopolies. They tend to be utilities like the electric company or something like that, okay, or the water company, all right? That's all you need to know in a nutshell about monopolies in the US these days. The other thing that's not going to be on the exam is game theory stuff. Okay, game theory is really interesting, but it's very subtle. We offer multiple courses on game theory in the economics major. So the real takeaway about game theory has to do with oligopoly. Oligopoly, we believe that oligopolies follow the same rules for maximizing profits that the other market structures do, which is to say they want to maximize profits, so they choose a level of output where MR equals MC. What makes oligopoly complicated in real life is your demand and your marginal revenue curves depend on what the other firms in the industry are doing. Okay, so it's hard to draw the graph for an oligopoly because the curves are constantly shifting. Okay, they're shifting because when Coke does something different, Pepsi's demand gets affected. Okay, so the best thinking these days on how to understand oligopoly is with game theory. Okay. But that's a more advanced topic, and so if you're interested, I can tell you what courses you might want to take as you go forward. Okay. That's all I wanted to say, I think. So let me open it up to questions to you guys. What questions do you have still?
Economic rent. Is that like interest on a loan?
No, economic rent is a fairly subtle idea. The short way to think about it is it is a positive economic profit. Okay, now let me tell you kind of the more complicated definition. Economic rent is the return to a unique factor of production, return beyond opportunity cost. Okay, so think of somebody like LeBron James. Okay, he gets paid more than the average professional basketball player because of his unique abilities. Okay, so the difference between what the average professional basketball player earns and what he earns is understood as an economic rent, the return to his unique abilities there. Okay, so rent on a property is not the same thing as economic rent. All right. Think about a golf course. Okay. There are often economic rents associated with golf courses, and what they would be is the difference between what the land earns the owner as a golf course minus what it would earn in its next best use. Okay, so maybe that would be as a farm, maybe that would be as residential property or something like that. Usually golf courses are more profitable than those alternatives. And so the difference between the income to the golf course as a golf course and the income as the next best thing is an economic rent.
Okay. So it's similar to opportunity cost?
Well, it is return in addition, return beyond the opportunity cost.
Beyond the opportunity.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's a pretty subtle idea.
Okay.
Next question.
The other thing, what is the relationship between marginal cost curve and the supply curve? They're not the same thing, right?
Well, they sort of are the same thing, but I'm gonna say it in a more subtle way. The marginal cost curve plays the role under imperfect competition. The marginal cost curve plays the role that the supply curve would for a perfectly competitive firm. So to put that differently, and not to blow your mind, there is no supply curve for a monopolist,
okay,
but the marginal cost curve plays that role for them.
Okay.
So your instincts were correct there.
Okay.
Other questions? While you're thinking, I'll say something for the people who showed up a little bit late. The exam will be open at 8 p.m. tonight and will stay open until Friday midnight. So if you want to take it before Friday, you're welcome to. Once you start, you'll have an hour, actually more than an hour. So try not to worry about the time. You should have plenty of time. Other questions?
Yeah, there was some I guess this is less test related, but I was curious how you would deal with it. Recently there's been the women just won the World Cup, and there's been a big push for pay.
Yes.
And accounting wise, they make more money in revenue than the men. So you would think, well, they should get more. But economic wise, the opportunity cost of the men is higher because they make more when they're playing in other places as opposed to what they would be for the national team. So how would you handle that?
In a way, what you said is correct, but it's also circular. So what you're saying is discrimination on the national team is justified because of discrimination in markets.
I was just asking how
Yeah.
you would handle it.
Okay. Short answer. We're going to talk about these issues beginning next week.
Mm-hmm.
There was a really interesting article in the Post the other day that looked at the revenues of the U.S. Soccer Federation. They're the ones who own the national teams, and the way the standard argument is that if male athletes bring in more money than female athletes do, then it makes sense that you should pay them more than female athletes. That's the market argument here.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, we can think about that a little bit in the context of the national team, but there's one thing that's different there. And that is, and again, this is my thinking, is the national team is not supposed to be a profit-seeking entity. It's supposed to represent the country. And therefore, it seems to me that just on that basis, we should pay them the same as the men's national team gets paid. Okay, that's without looking at any of the revenue streams and things like that. Okay, it turns out that the question isn't as straightforward as it appears. So if you look at the revenues that are coming in, a large portion of the revenues are endorsement deals. Okay, and there have been in the past more endorsement revenues coming in for the men's team than there have been for the women's team, though that has changed dramatically over the last year. So that's an issue. The other issue is the pay setup is different between the men and the women. And I don't mean just that the men get paid more. The women get paid for being on the team, whether they play or not. The men get paid only when they play. So you can't just look at the numbers without making some kind of an adjustment for that. I'm not justifying the situation. I'm just saying that it's a little more complicated than you might think. I know where that article is. I'm going to try to track it down and I'll send it to you, Andrew.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question going forward. So this week, so after we do the test and stuff,
We're not talking about the World Cup anymore?
No. Changing the subject. So are we working on chapter 9 then this week and we'll discuss it? Okay. So after test and everything.
Okay. So the short answer, and I shouldn't tell you this until after Friday, but I'm going to assume that you can handle this. Sam's group, pay attention. She may need a hug or something. Okay, we have 3 modules left to do. We have basically a week and a half left. Okay, so start work. Yeah, do as many as you can. I'm also thinking about options for deferring the final to give you guys a little more time to study. It would be perfectly okay with me if you wanted to take it the following week. And so rather than making a blanket policy, I think that by next week I'll have figured out what the different possibilities are, and then I'll let you guys decide what you personally want to do. So.
And then I'm assuming then one of the last weeks we'll go over things just like, like how we do now for the whole thing.
We will. Yeah. So we have, is it 2 weeks or is it 3 weeks? Let me look at the calendar real fast.
2 weeks.
No, it's 2 weeks, right? So 2 weeks from tomorrow is the scheduled final exam. So we have 2 hangouts left, at least, right? So next week, we'll start to talk about the final. We'll also talk about all of the labor market stuff and probably some of the environmental stuff. And then the following week, we'll do the rest in the Hangout, which is the rest of the environmental stuff. We'll talk about international trade, and we'll also talk about the final exam. Okay, again, it's a lot of material, and we'll just do the best we can.
I got an idea. You just tell me what you think about this. Instead of, I mean, it's always an option to push off the exam, but how about just take away any assignments? That way it gives us more time to study the actual substance.
I believe there's only one more assignment, and that's the final peer group evaluation. So I've already done that basically.
Works for me.
So.
And you said for this exam, labor markets and stuff is on it too, right? From last week?
No.
No. Oh, okay. No.
Okay. So just market structure, production costs, and what is business.
Okay. That's good.
Unless you want extra questions.
No. Okay.
One more thing for product differentiation.
Yeah.
Is there just four, I guess, types of it: quality, design, advertising, and location, or were those just four examples?
Those are four examples, but I can't think offhand of anything else other than you can use advertising to argue that your product is better, even if there is no difference, right? So there's some nuances there as well.
Okay.
Other questions? Mosquito just flew by. Fortunately, they don't like me.
Oh, that's nice.
Well, not so nice for my sweet wife, who they love.
Do marginal revenue and marginal cost curves, do those always start at 1 on the quantity on the x-axis?
No. However, that's not a big deal because it's hard to imagine a firm that would produce less than 1 unit of output and be in business. Okay. The first unit is always going to have a high marginal cost because it's going to incorporate all the fixed costs, right? But after the first unit, then things get interesting and realistic.
Okay.
Well, if you have questions, you know how to reach me. And I will be available between now and the weekend. So feel free to shoot me an email. If you want me to explain something to you, and we can set up an appointment online probably. I talked to somebody on the phone today, so that was easy enough to do. So just let me know.
Are we going to do group text corrections like we did the first time, or not this time?
Well, Kevin doesn't seem to want to do that.
No. I'll ask my group. I help them out, no problem.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying,
there's no reason why you can't do that yourself, right? I mean, I don't mean do it yourself. I mean, your group can still work together and figure this stuff out. Okay, so yes, have at it.
I was just saying, like, random questions or some kind of weird stuff.
Kevin, you gave me license to throw you under the bus for anything.
My group knows where I'm at.
Okay, sounds good. All right, well, I will say goodnight then, and I'll talk to you soon.
All right. Good luck, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks.